Okay, let's set the scene. Imagine London. It's spring 1935. The city is just buzzing. Union Jacks everywhere, crowds lining the streets, absolutely packed.
Yeah, a real moment.
A huge moment. They're cheering. The sound is massive as King George V and Queen Mary roll past in their carriage.
The Silver Jubilee. 25 years on the throne.
Exactly. A massive spectacle, all the royal pageantry you'd expect. Pure celebration.
A really significant public display of national feeling and the monarchy's place.
And this is where it gets interesting for our deep dive today. Amidst all that public noise, all that grandeur, there were these quieter things happening.
Absolutely. Personal moments, exchanges away from the crowds.
Right, because while the Jubilee was, like you said, this huge statement about the monarchy, about unity, it also gave these little glimpses, didn't it, behind the palace walls into the family itself.
It did. And it's that contrast, really, the public face and the private reality. That's so fascinating.
That's exactly where we're heading. We're focusing on two specific gifts, gifts that seem pretty simple on the surface.
Given to two very young princesses during all this celebration.
Yeah. Princess Elizabeth, she was 9 at the time, and her little sister, Princess Margaret, only 5.
Tiny.
And their grandfather, the king, George V, gives them each a pearl necklace.
A lovely gesture, you might think. Very traditional grandfatherly gift, especially for royalty.
Totally. Seems sweet, maybe even a bit ordinary in that context. But as we're going to unpack, these weren't just, pretty trinkets.
No, far from it. They were loaded with meaning, with tradition.
And they actually ended up playing this really significant role, surprisingly so, in the public images of both princesses. And maybe even, in their private lives too.
That's the core of it. So our mission today in this deep dive is to really get into the stories behind these necklaces.
What can these simple strands of pearls actually tell us about the royals, about legacy, about family connections within this huge institution?
We've looked at accounts, focusing specifically on these pieces, trying to trace their journey, their significance.
Okay, so where should we start unraveling this? Maybe with the elder sister's gift, Elizabeth's necklace.
Good place to start. So Princess Elizabeth received a really quite magnificent gift for a 9-year-old. A 3-strand pearl necklace.
3 strands. That feels significant somehow.
It does. I mean, pearls themselves, historically, they're tied to ideas of purity, grace, timelessness, qualities you definitely link with royalty, right?
Absolutely. Classic royal elegance.
And the 3 strands, you could almost see that as representing continuity, like a visual metaphor for the royal line stretching through time.
Interesting. So even as a gift for a child, it kind of hinted at the future, at the monarchy she'd eventually lead?
Subtly, yes. It planted that seed, perhaps, a nod to the enduring nature of the institution.
And it wasn't just symbolic at the start, was it? I mean, that necklace became completely iconic.
Oh, absolutely iconic. It's almost impossible to picture the queen, especially in her younger days and throughout much of her reign, without thinking of those pearls.
It really was her signature look, wasn't it? You saw it constantly.
Constantly at the grandest state functions, draped over incredible gowns, but also reportedly in more sort of relaxed settings too. Behind the scenes, it was just her.
So its importance really grew over time.
Immensely. It evolved from a childhood gift into this powerful symbol of her steadiness, her quiet elegance, her dedication to the role.
It's quite amazing, actually, how a piece of jewelry could do that. Could shift from being a present for a little girl to being this emblem of a monarch.
It really shows how objects can gather meaning, doesn't it? Accumulate history and emotion.
And it was always that connection back to her grandfather, too, wasn't it? A physical reminder.
A tangible link, yes. To King George V, to the expectations placed on her, even way back then.
It feels like those pearls, wearing them through decades of, massive global change, wars, crises, celebrations. They must have soaked up some of that history.
You could certainly see it that way. They became more than just decoration. They were a constant.
A visible symbol of the legacy she was carrying, the responsibilities. It's kind of a real aha moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you think about how this simple string of pearls, became so tied up with her identity.
And her place in history, exactly.
Okay, so that's Elizabeth's iconic 3-strand necklace. What about Princess Margaret? What did she receive?
Well, Princess Margaret received a 2-strand pearl necklace, also from King George V, of course.
2 strands. So slightly smaller.
Yes, a bit less grand perhaps than Elizabeth's, but still a very significant and lovely gift in its own right.
And she was only 5, you said?
Just 5. So the scale, the 2 strands, probably felt more suitable for such a young child.
Right. Did she wear it much as a child, or did it come later?
It seems it gradually became part of her collection as she got older. Maybe she didn't grasp the full symbolic weight immediately at age 5.
Understandable.
But it clearly became something she treasured and wore quite frequently later on.
Does that necklace, the 2-strand one, maybe reflect Margaret's personality a bit more?
That's an interesting thought. How so?
Well, Elizabeth's became this symbol of duty of the monarch. Margaret, she had her own distinct style, didn't she? More glamorous sometimes, maybe more individual.
She certainly did.
Yeah.
Known for her fashion sense, for embracing more dazzling jewels as she got older.
Right. So maybe the 2-strand necklace compared to the 3-strand one feels a bit more personal. Less about the role and more about the person.
I think that's a really insightful way to look at it. It does feel slightly more intimate, perhaps. Less overtly formal than the 3-strand design.
And did she wear it alongside those more dazzling pieces later in life?
She did, yes.
Yeah.
That's what's quite telling. She amassed this incredible collection, stunning tiaras, diamonds, colored gems, really statement pieces. But the 2-strand pearls were still there. Often seen on her at public events, yes, but also reportedly at more private family occasions.
Ah, okay. So that suggests it held a real personal value for her beyond just being another piece of jewelry?
Exactly. It suggests a deep, enduring connection to that specific necklace. It wasn't just rotated out as newer, grander pieces came along.
It really brings home that idea of continuity again, but maybe in a more personal way for her.
Yes, I think so. Like a touchstone back to her childhood, perhaps.
To her grandfather's affection, maybe a simpler time before everything that came with being Princess Margaret.
A link to family, to heritage, absolutely. You imagine the memories associated with it over all those years.
The moments it must have been present for. Which actually brings us to a really curious part of its story.
The mystery.
The mystery of the missing necklace. So, Princess Margaret passed away in 2002.
Yes. And afterwards, a large auction of her jewelry was held. Christie's, I believe.
Right. And lots of incredibly valuable, historically significant pieces went up for sale. Things people really wanted.
Oh, definitely. Tiaras she'd worn, famous diamond necklaces, brooches with incredible provenance, documented histories. They fetched huge sums.
Generated massive interest, naturally.
Right.
But
the 2-strand pearl necklace, the gift from her grandfather.
it wasn't there. Conspicuously absent from the auction catalog, from the sale itself.
It just wasn't included. And given its background, its sentimentality, that absence is... well, it's noticeable.
It really is. It adds this whole other layer of intrigue, doesn't it? What happened to it?
That's the big question. It wasn't like it was insignificant, especially emotionally.
So what are the theories? Where might it have gone?
Well, the most likely explanation, and the one that many observers lean towards, is that it was kept privately by the family.
Ah, okay. Passed down.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Perhaps to one of her children, David Linley, or Lady Sarah Chatto. Or maybe another close family member.
That makes sense. Given its personal connection to her grandfather, to her childhood, you can see why they might want to keep that within the family.
Exactly. Rather than letting such a personally significant piece go to public auction, it's always plausible they'd choose to hold on to it as a private heirloom.
It kind of elevates the necklace, doesn't it? The fact it wasn't sold alongside all those other glittering, valuable items.
It does. It shifts the focus from just its material value, which, for pearls of that era, would still be considerable, but perhaps not in the league of huge diamonds or tiaras.
Right. It makes it feel more like a symbol of her personal legacy, maybe, or that family connection they wanted to preserve.
Precisely. It makes you really think about the decision-making process there. What made this piece different? Why was it held back?
Did it hold some unique memory or significance for them that we don't know about?
We can only speculate, of course, but its absence certainly transforms it into something more enigmatic, more resonant.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it? In a world obsessed with the biggest diamonds, the grandest tiaras.
Yeah, the sheer bling sometimes.
This story highlights the power of simpler pieces. The ones that carry maybe less monetary value, but huge personal weight.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that beyond the price tag, there's history, there's family, there are memories woven into these objects.
This wasn't just any necklace. It was a gift from her grandfather. A specific, meaningful gesture during a big historical moment.
A piece of her personal story and a piece of the royal family story, too.
So just to sort of pull those threads together, we've got these two pearl necklaces, both gifts from King George V.
One, Elizabeth's, becomes this globally recognized symbol of the Queen. Very public, very iconic.
And the other, Margaret's, is this more intimate piece, worn consistently, but now vanished from public view, shrouded in this affectionate mystery.
And that two-strand necklace, even though we don't see it, it's become a symbol in its own way, hasn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, it represents those enduring family bonds, maybe the quieter connections within a very public family. It speaks to a kind of royal elegance that's more understated, perhaps more personal.
Its legacy continues, even unseen.
Exactly. It stands for maybe simplicity, timeless beauty, the importance of tradition and personal heritage within that grand structure.
So the story it tells, even in its absence, is one of love, family history, and a certain kind of quiet royal grace.
Beautifully put. It's a compelling narrative woven into those two strands of pearls.
It really is. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about all the objects in any family, really, not just the royals, the seemingly small things that carry huge weight.
That's a great point to end on.
The things tucked away in drawers or boxes that hold these massive unspoken stories. Things whose value is only truly understood by the people closest to them.
Absolutely. Think about it. For you listening, what seemingly simple objects exist in your own life, in your own family history?
Yeah, like maybe an old watch, a faded photo, a book with an inscription.
Exactly. Things that might not look like much to an outsider, but for you, they hold immense sentimental value, connecting you to people, to places, to the past.
Like Princess Margaret's pearls, they carry stories and significance far beyond what you see on the surface. A reminder of how personal connections shape the bigger picture.